But let's move on to an amazing topic. Certainly, I was going to wear my Mercedes gear, but too many people were going to be calling me
I
biased
was
on
waiting
here.
for it, man. I was waiting for that Lewis Hamilton, like the teal, black, silver. I was waiting for it, man.
I've got the Mercedes team shirt, man, but I'm telling you, too many people are going to be calling me biased. And I want to wait because, like I said, with the topics 4 and 5, there's going to be a lot of Max fans on here and a lot of other people trying to say I'm biased. So I decided to go with a neutral shirt for this topic. But this topic is a big one, and it's one that we certainly love. Formula One and Lewis Hamilton winning the British Grand Prix after serving a 10-second penalty from his collision with Max Verstappen. But there was a lot of other things that happened in this race besides that collision, like Charles Leclerc leading 50 laps and coming in second place, or Yuki Tsunoda continuing his scoring streak for the young Japanese superstar.
Yeah, Yuki Tsunoda getting a top 10 finish, obviously not the top story at all, seeing what happened at the very beginning of the race and then the last couple of laps when Hamilton was able to pass Leclerc and end up winning at Silverstone. But Tsunoda getting a top 10 again, it's so people, you know more about F1 than I do, but just paying attention to F1 a lot lately and trying to learn more about the sport. If you're not in a souped up car, it is so hard to and be on one of those super teams. It is so hard to get in that top 10, never mind getting that top 3. So
Yep.
For Tsunoda to do that is just very impressive. He's had a great rookie year. He really has. And we mentioned before a few shows ago how much we think that guy could be one of the next superstars in F1 racing. And he showed it this past weekend at Silverstone. So definitely a guy to look out for. But like you mentioned, just an awesome race. I mean, you hate to see Verstappen, who's right now he's the best driver in F1 this year. He's having the best season. Not the best driver, but he's having the best season. We know Lewis Hamilton's the best driver. But,
Yep.
You hate to see that type of accident. It looked like he got pretty banged up, too. He actually ended up going to the hospital.
Yep.
He says he's okay, so I would imagine he'll be at the next race 2 weekends from now. But just an awesome race. Like you mentioned, Leclerc was leading by 50 laps, and Ferrari looked like they were going to win this major tournament. And then, of course, Lewis Hamilton comes right in from behind and wins the British Grand Prix again. And this means a lot to him. I mean, I've been listening to some stuff about this, and any British F1 racer, wants to win the British Grand Prix. I mean, they grow up on that track, and they go from being this like youth driver for however long with this, only a few fans in the stands. Now all of a sudden there's 140,000 people at this thing, and you're
Yep.
trying to win it on your home turf in your home country. So an awesome thing once again. I believe this is the 9th time that Hamilton has won the British Grand Prix. It's either 7 or 9. I know it's one of those odd numbers.
8.
It's 8. So I was off again. So he wins the 8th time at Silverstone. So just really cool to see Hamilton win that again. We thought that he was going to have sort of an off year, but then when you have the Verstappen crash and then Hamilton comes in first, I believe he's now just 8 points behind again in the standings. So as good as Verstappen has been, Lewis Hamilton's just right back there, and that pisses off Red Bull because they've been thinking the past few weeks, this is going to be our year. We're going to take it home this year, and then Hamilton's right nipping at their heels once again. So just a great race overall, a great weekend for F1, despite the controversy.
It was an amazing weekend for F1, and, brought a lot of eyes to the sport, and a lot of people were watching, and then it had sold-out attendance all 3 days. So I think throughout the weekend, the attendance was almost 500,000 people. So, I mean, there was a lot of people on Silverstone's tracks watching these guys battle it out throughout the weekend. And this was, remember, it was the sprint race weekend too. So not only were they, testing out the new qualifying format, you had, your regular qualifying on Friday, you had your sprint race qualifying on Saturday, then you had your full race on Sunday. So, man, there was a ton of action at Silverstone, and the fans were really appreciating it and loving it, and especially loving their British drivers, not only Lewis Hamilton, but Lando Norris and George Russell. Mr. Saturday put on a show actually on Friday in qualifying and really got himself up into the top 10. And then, obviously took himself a penalty and got knocked back to 12th for the sprint race or after the sprint race. So He had himself a rough weekend. George Russell and Lando had himself a great weekend. Lando really, once again, putting that McLaren in racing form. But, man, I think the real story, obviously, is Lewis Hamilton winning. And, obviously, we're going to talk about it in the next segment. That crash was a big moment in the opening laps. But then, got a 10-second penalty. So no matter what your opinion is, he got a 10-second penalty, served the 10 seconds in the pits, and that put him out in, I believe, 4th or 5th place when he came back on track. Then Carlos Sainz had a slow pit stop. Immediately, Lewis went by him there. Then he went by a couple other guys on track. And then Mercedes made the key decision to swap cars between Bottas and Mercedes to let Lewis through to go attack Charles for the win. If Bottas doesn't do that, then Lewis doesn't have a chance to get unleashed, per se, and go forward to go attack Charles Leclerc. So big ups to Valtteri Bottas playing the team game for Mercedes and proving his worth yet again. Honestly, I think Valtteri had himself a great weekend and could have had a chance to win, but it was a split of strategies. They stopped him much earlier to cover Lando Norris, and when they did that, it pretty much took him out of the chance to go for the win later on when, Lewis Hamilton pit, I believe, about 7 laps later, maybe even a few more laps later than Bottas did. So he had fresher tires at the time. They made the quick decision. They swapped cars going into sector 3, and then Lewis was unleashed, and Charles Leclerc leading for 50 laps thinking, oh, man, Ferrari, this is our big moment. We're going to get our win at Silverstone. And then, oh, man, who's that in my rearview mirror? 7-time champion Lewis Hamilton on the charge after serving a 10-second penalty, and now he's attacking me. And I just think it was one of those things where Charles Leclerc was another one of those runners that pit a few laps earlier than Lewis Hamilton, and his tires fell off. And he really couldn't defend much at that point, and he knew it. And honestly, it was going into the same corner that the incident of Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton happened, Copse Corner, and they both made it through clean. 2 cars made it through clean, but I also think Leclerc knew, hey, I don't have much tire left to battle here. I'm going to give him a little bit more space, and there's a little bit more respect there between those 2 drivers. So you got to see it. 2 cars went through there, and then before they got to Maggots and Beckett's, Hamilton was through, and then he goes on to win. So, I mean, what an exciting race. And like you said, Red Bull is certainly not happy after winning 5 races in a row, 4 for Max Verstappen, 1 for Sergio Perez. They really thought, hey, we're in the driver's seat now, and they still are because they are still leading. But after this race, after the British Grand Prix, with the high finish of not only Lewis Hamilton, but Valtteri Bottas, the Constructors' Championship is now tight again. And then Lewis Hamilton has got himself right back in the fight for the Drivers' Championship going forward. Obviously, it's going to be a tight battle going forward between these two. Both of them have come out and had words about the accident and the incident. So I'm looking forward to an exciting race, certainly next when we go out to Hungary. But, man, I don't know. This British Grand Prix was exciting. Really exciting. But if you go back to last year's 2020 Grand Prix when Lewis Hamilton won on 3 tires at the British Grand Prix, I don't know which one's better, but, the British GP is just always putting up amazing races, and Silverstone is just that amazing track.
Yeah, Mercedes feeling good too, because there was all this talk about what's Lewis Hamilton going to do after this year. As far as his contract is concerned, is Mercedes punting on this year with the new rule changes? And then they sign Hamilton to an extension, and then they have something like this where he's actually able to come back and place first in the British Grand Prix, which we mentioned how much it means to him. Pretty good couple of weeks here for Mercedes, and they're showing that, hey, we're not punting on this season. We're right back in this thing. Hamilton's 8 points behind the top standings there, behind Max Verstappen. So it's going to be interesting down the stretch, as always, the fight for the top spot in F1.